That's it. Okay, good evening and welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for June 18th, 2024. Time now is 7:01. Before we start, for all those not familiar, in case something occurs, we have emergency exit to your right where you came in, to your left in the far corner, and to the board's left over here, leading to the parking lot. I'd ask if you would be pleased to stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm going to beg with your indulgence because we have a kind of lengthy evening in deliberations. I'm going to ask, we're going to jump to item number 3. It's a special use permit application from Lindsay Marie Giagni. Okay. For a property owned by Troy Miller located at 106 Maple Avenue in Altamont. Tax map number 37.18-4-24. So would you be so kind as to come up and address the board?
I can be loud enough, but if everybody, because I know it's being recorded.
Well, you'll be addressing the board, not them.
Okay. Can you guys hear me okay?
However you like, yeah.
So I'm here to request a special use permit. I'd like to move my existing insurance agency to Altamont at the address you had mentioned, the 106 Maple. Prior, it was a cafe, so in order to go from cafe to professional office space, I'm here to ask for approval to be able to do that and answer any questions that you guys have.
My apologies, okay? For attendance purposes, would the board introduce themselves?
Charles Trout. Simon Litton.
James Sullivan.
Andrea Witham.
And Danny Ramirez. Thank you. I apologize. Anybody have any questions on the applicant? It's a small cafe around the corner on Maple Avenue that she wants to make an insurance office.
I know I provided some additional details in advance for all of you, in an effort of time, knowing that you have a lengthy agenda. I don't want to go through all of them, so any questions I'd be happy to address.
I would ask you at this time, what's the occupancy as far as employees office-wise?
Yep, so currently it's myself as well as my husband, who technically works for me, and I have 2 full-time employees, 1 part-time employee, and I have another employee who's going through licensing. We don't anticipate having all of us in office at the same time. We try to work a rotating hybrid schedule. There would always be somebody in office during business hours. Typically, I would say about 3 people.
And the reason I ask is parking. Okay. Will there be any changes to the exterior of the office?
Yeah, so we had talked about just some very basic cosmetic updates with some of the chipping paint, being painted over, some of the flowers, make it look nice, and then also discussed, I'm getting a quote currently for the pre-existing red awning to replace that, make it look nice, maybe like a State Farm red. I think that could go nice.
Okay.
What type of signage would you have?
So I currently am working with a provider who had come out to do the survey, and they're working directly with Gary in the village. I'm planning on having that awning that would replace the existing, and then vinyl in window. I currently don't have any lit signage, and I also don't feel like lit signage would really go with the property. So I want to have as minimal of an impact with being known I'm there, and I think that I'm able to achieve that with the awning as well as vinyl in the window. But anything else that we decide, of course, we'll go through the proper process.
I don't have any additional questions. My concerns were signage, parking, okay? And any exterior, if there was any major, changes to the exterior of the structure.
Yeah, I would not say that there's going to be anything major exterior unless the property owner has plans to do something, but I really think just very basic cosmetic facelift. Make it look nice, put some nice flowers like it used to be, and, take care of it a little bit.
Okay.
That's all.
Any questions, Andrea?
No, everything seems straightforward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate your time.
I open it up to the public. If anybody has any questions or concerns? Hmm?
No.
No.
It's not.
I'm sorry, can I make just a note really quick?
Absolutely.
Sorry, guys. So in an effort of time, knowing that I need to get approval in order to proceed, I am a notary, and I did sign and put my own stamp. I'm happy to give you guys my license. I was not able to get to a notary. I want to be extremely forthcoming for that. I did that in good faith to get my paperwork submitted. So if there's an issue, I'm happy to provide additional documentation.
Thank you. So we can just move on with it. I'm just schedule it? Yeah, for next one. Okay.
Would be a motion.
Okay. Having no concerns or questions, entertain a motion to have a public hearing next month?
Can you just wait till the siren goes?
Absolutely. And I'll talk this way.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about that. I think it's great that somebody's going to be using that space. So, thank you.
Thank you, Simon. This time I entertain a motion to hold a public hearing at the next meeting in July.
So moved.
Second, anybody?
So moved.
So first James Sullivan and Simon second. Okay. Roll call, Board Member Trout,
Agree.
Board Member Litton,
Agree.
Board Member Sullivan,
Agreed?
Board Member Witham,
Agree.
and Chairperson Romero.
In favor.
So that would be the 23rd, July 23rd.
That is correct. That meeting will take place on July 23rd, 2024, at 7 in the evening. Okay. Okay. Returning to deliberations for Fox Living Solutions LLC for major subdivision property. Right. For the record, a secret negative declaration that was issued on August 22nd, 2023 by the Altamont ZBA for the area variances and subdivision. Engineering review, the latest comment by email on June 17th, 2024. I have reviewed the attachment and have the following few comments. This would be from Brad, the engineer. These are technical in nature and require only modest revisions. All other VDE comments have been addressed. Proposed lot features and rain garden sizing to occur when the building footprints are known in the building permit phase and coordinated with the village building inspector. Number one, the invert in at CB2 from the FES should be 409.69 and not 410.4. The CB and the 1 and the CB2, the rim elevation should be the same. CB1 is 1 foot above CB2 rim. Please confirm elevations and revise. Reorientate lot 5 through 8 driveway section detail to reflect the sewer force main near the center and not the west side as shown on the plan. 4, provide a simple detail for the sewer connections for lots 10 and 11 into the gravity sewer. Each connection should consist of a new 4-foot length of 8-inch ductile iron pipe, a sewer top at 2, and ductile iron couplers at each end of the pipe with the transition gaskets to existing pipe. Material outside diameter. Show 4 inches of 1-inch crushed stone bedding under all the piping. These will be fairly easy to address and will be required. ZB action could assume these will be revised soon, in our opinion. We can verify via the PDF review.
Just make a note too.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to make one note.
Make a note, sure. Go ahead.
Just a update on the dredging of the creek. I have a communication from the mayor that showing me to share that the village has been working with both DEC and the Army Corps of Engineers on mitigating stormwater issues with Fly Creek with their guidance and have been given the okay from both agencies. The village will undertake a dredging project this summer to address the stormwater drainage issues affecting the Scary Plank and Euclid Ave areas. Those are both pre-existing conditions I know that the board had been concerned with at previous meetings. We do have the official letter from Army Corps and expect the official letter from DEC later this week. As for a timetable, there's not an exact date, but it will be this summer. And next week, the village will be checking to see what private land, if any, may be needed to access for the project. So that's on the dredging of the creek. And just for the board, the checklist that's in front of you is just pulled from Chapter 315, subdivision of land. Pulled general requirements that the board should consider as part of your deliberations tonight. It is just a cut and paste from the law, so I think, you know, my suggestion would be to go through each standard, each consideration, make notes, and hopefully that will guide the deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, under the general policy considerations in section 315-3, A, the land must be buildable and free of hazard. Land to be subdivided shall be of such character that it can be used safely for building purposes without danger to health and safety or peril of fire, flood, erosion, or other menace. Anyone concerns? Anything you want to chat about? We got on that first one?
Well, some people have raised the potential requirement for a bond that would reimburse the homeowners if flooding did occur despite the predictions by the engineer. I don't know how we feel about that.
I can comment too.
I was going to ask you if there was any, in the past, we've normally had an escrow account on something, but
Yeah.
nothing about a bond.
Well, escrow or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a security.
Yeah.
Yeah, so later on in the document, I did pull from the subdivision law, the board does have the ability to require certain improvements to be completed and to have a bond on file to make sure that those improvements are made. A lot of times you see that when there's a large, common, roads, streetlights, things like that. So I think to what your question may be more the performance escrow, which is in section 315-33. And that's in order to ensure that developments perform to the expectations of the village. A performance escrow shall be established, which shall be satisfactory to the village board as to form, sufficiency, and manner. So that's where we talk about what type of security. That'll be up to the village board, whether or not that's a bond, letter of credit, or actually cash put into an account. That section states that for a period of 1 year or such other period as the zoning board of appeals may determine appropriate, to make sure that the improvements completed and shall be specified by the zoning board of appeals and expressed in the escrow agreement. So we wouldn't make it in general for the entire project, but if you had specific concerns, sounds like potentially flooding, that could be worked in. So that's certainly a section in the subdivision law that this board can consider.
Thank you.
I think it's almost certain that the properties on West Cohary Plank will see flooding. They're already in a floodplain, and the predictions are that with climate change, there will be more flooding in the future. How that would be separated from impacts from the development would be extremely difficult, I think, to determine.
I would also add that it seems plausible that with the remediations that we've pushed for, that the flooding that's been experienced by some of the homeowners, could be mitigated.
Yeah, and the only exception would be their paving over the access corridor, which is currently like a semi-wetland that stores water. And
Yes,
and
but
that-
with,
And that's not mitigated.
well, there's stormwater catch basins there.
Yeah, but it just drains directly, and currently the drain is plugged, so.
Could you all do me a favor and just pull your mics a little bit closer, please? Thank you.
What, are these yours or mine? Oh, mine. Another thing to note is that for the houses on the eastern edge of, the eastern end of the development, the sole access is through a floodplain. So there is a potential of having access cut off during an event.
I don't want to assume, but I make comment that that floodplain, has anybody ever been cut off in the past that you know of?
I do not.
Okay, moving on to B. Proper provision shall be made for stormwater drainage, water supply, sewage disposal, erosion control, and other needed improvements and utilities. Starting off with stormwater drainage, the engineering report, they worked on that, and I know for a fact that that's been increased. The latest one with, I'll call it the perimeter on the north or eastern end, with the swale, rain gardens, that the sizes will be adjusted accordingly by the impervious construction that would take place. Water supply, we've been told, DPW at the Altamont water supply will be adequate to supply the new homes. Sewage disposal, we also have been told by DPW that that is adequate. In fact, that was upgraded recently, I'm going to say within the last 2 years. Erosion control, that's part of any construction. If you talk about erosion or runoff during construction, to mitigate any excessive runoff to any, and pollution control into the creek or anybody else's property. The utilities that right now we have no control over, I will just throw this out there. The electrical, is that going to be underground? Okay. So, anybody have any thoughts and comments on B?
I mean, I think we have to trust the fact that the engineer has gone through the stormwater drainage plans several times, and in his opinion, it's been addressed adequately.
And do keep in mind that those rain gardens will change in size. I'm just going to put it out there, depending on the structures. There's more roof, a 2,000 square foot roof versus a 1,000 square foot roof, then in theory, that rain garden will double in size to be able to catch the rain runoff.
Just the latest comment from the engineer, Brad Grant, on the Albany County Planning's note about the SWIP. This is from his email. Project is a residential subdivision of 11 lots where one home already exists. The remaining 10 lots with new homes will disturb less than 3 acres and result in less than 25% impervious surfaces once completed. The project is compliant with New York State DEC permit GP-0-20-001 and is exempted from a full stormwater pollution plan due to the permits tables 1 and 2 and Appendix B due to less than 5 acres of disturbance and less than 25% imperviousness. A basic erosion and sediment controls plan has been developed and deemed adequate as required. The village and its designated engineer has requested rain gardens and vegetated swales to manage stormwater that have been adequately incorporated into the project documents. Preservation of the native field grasses outside of homes, driveways, and lawns has also been incorporated into the project documents. So that's from the village engineer.
Thank you. All right, moving on to C. Proposed streets and new parks and other public ways or spaces shall compose a convenience system conforming to the official map as it may be adopted, and shall comply with the Village of Altamont Comprehensive Plan and all other local ordinances and laws.
Doesn't seem like that's applicable because we're not adding streets or parks.
They're all
Public
private.
ways, yeah.
That is correct. Thank you, James. D, streets shall be of such width, grade, and location as to accommodate prospective traffic, to afford adequate light and air, and to facilitate fire protection and snow removal pursuant to 315-24. I know there was discussion and a lot of detailing and engineering. While it may not be a street, private driveways, as long as they are, will afford the fire equipment to be able to enter the properties, to driveways close enough to the house, not from the streets necessarily, and be able to turn. Will have an adequate base so that they don't sink, become damaged, bogged down, or, deterred from going forward to another emergency, should it be the case, okay? Any comments or concerns on that one?
No, again, it seemed like it was addressed last meeting by the conversation with Paul and Brad.
Thank you, James. E, park area of suitable location, size, and character for playground and other recreational open space purposes shall be shown on the subdivision plat, wherever appropriate and where required by zoning board of appeals pursuant to 315-28. There is no park that's being added, okay, so that would not apply. F, the proposed development shall be aesthetically compatible with the existing development and character of the village in compliance with applicable tenets of the Village of Altamont, comprehensive plan and architectural design standards as they may be adopted. We don't have those plans yet, but I've been not told, but in reading that this is not a cookie cutter development, that the houses will look different, so it doesn't stand out. And part of the approval is that those plans, when they come in, will be subject to, again, the board approval.
Our board
Yeah,
or
so
building
yeah,
inspector?
what this board can do is set as a condition of the final plat approval is go through the standards. There are in section 315-25 standards about the building design. Some of them, are shown on what has been provided, dealing with building placement, variation of lot width and area. Lot areas and lot widths shall vary at random to the extent practicable, and to the extent possible, no more than 2 lots in a row shall have the same lot width. Lots shall vary by a minimum of 5-foot increments. C, a variety of architectural features and building materials is encouraged to give each building or group of buildings a distinct character. So that's not a steadfast requirement, but this board could make that a condition, that the features and building materials are distinct. The scale of new construction, including the arrangement of windows, doors, and other openings, shall be compatible and consistent with the adjacent buildings in the existing neighborhood. Front facade shall face onto a public street. Exterior materials and roof materials should be similar in appearance to those found on adjacent buildings within the neighborhood. Buildings shall have a variety of different roof overhang profiles. So the board could make all these a condition, and then you have the ability in section 315-34 inspections, that the village may employ an inspector to act as an agent of the zoning board of appeals for the purposes of ensuring the satisfactory completion of improvements required by the zoning board of appeals, and shall determine an amount sufficient to defray costs of inspection. So it's not that it's going to come back to this board per se, but with it being a condition of final plat approval, with it being a condition of building permit, with the ability to send out inspections, all of those are ways that you'd be able to check on any conditions that you impose.
Thank you.
Questions, concerns? All right, G, natural and historic features shall be preserved insofar as possible. All existing features of the landscape, excuse me, such as large trees, water and flood courses, historic sites, and other such irreplaceable environmentally sensitive areas and assets should be preserved. Again, going over the last several months and the landscaping and what's going to be disturbed is minimal compared to the lot sizes. I know there's concerns for those along Schoharie Plank West and on Western Avenue, that when these homes are built, they'll feel, call it naked to the public in their backyard. But whatever's there is not going to be disturbed. If anything, will be added to. There was a note of additional plantings along the back of the properties. Is that something that anybody want to talk about? So that if somebody on, say, Schoharie, I'm talking Schoharie Plank Road, their backyard, I know on the, call it the keyhole lot access road, they have plantings on either side, so those homes to the north or south or east or west will be shielded from any traffic coming back and forth on there. It's on the landscaping detail. But I think some people may, or we may want to wish, is there any plantings to the rear of those properties? I know there's a berm that should be built, if there's nothing there now, so as to help mitigate their exposure. What do you think?
So, I mean, I think we've talked about this because we have the area that's being called a tree line no cut area.
Right.
And then on the applicant's side of the property, at the applicant's side of the no cut line, there are the additional plantings. So there's already plantings there. So that would be covering the rear of the houses on Schoharie Plank. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, to
Yeah,
the
right
rear
there.
of their properties.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
where all the plantings appear to be.
Okay. It's my understanding that most of those are deciduous trees. Being a board, might I ask you to probably fill in the blanks, maybe address that?
I'm Ro Andrus with Walrath Surveying. We've really tried our best to buffer any adjacent neighbor from the new construction here, and we've chosen a mix of plantings, both deciduous and coniferous, black spruce and red maple mainly, along the rear of these lots on Schoharie Plank Road. Again, just to further mitigate any sort of disturbance that they may visually have in the future. We also have plantings along the lots, the existing lots on Western Avenue. Another mix of deciduous and coniferous trees, as well as a northern bayberry bush that we've spec'd, again, as a buffer area between those lots. And might I add, I believe it was to Section C, in addition to the rain gardens, we've added functional dry wells at the end of that to further reduce any sort of potential runoff from the
Right.
lots.
Thank you.
You got it.
Also, if I recall, there's I'm going to call it a 50-foot zone, for whatever it may be, off the top of my head, I don't recall the number, to the property line on the north, the rear, where the homes will be built, that will be so-called maintained, natural.
That is correct. And it is shown on, sorry, let me just find, I believe it's C-120. Towards the top of the page. And oh, sorry, one moment. C-140. And it is about a 50-foot buffer area that we proposed a restricted mowing area. And I can read it back to you. Shall be composed of mainly wild and natural grasses and flowers. So anything that is native in there now, we're proposing not to touch or have any sort of disturbance in those areas.
Thank you. H, the zoning board of appeals in reviewing a subdivision application shall take into account the provisions of the zoning law of the village of Altamont. That would go without saying.
Just in terms of zoning, it's, permitted use, single-family homes in this district. And minimum lot size requirements, that kind of goes towards that zoning law factor.
And for the record, these lot sizes exceed the minimum requirements. Very much so. Okay. Yes.
Going back to G, Mr. Connors has asked for screening trees. I believe he has asked for screening trees where his property adjoins the project. Has that been part of the plan?
They are not shown on this set of plans, but Mr. Connors is to the north of the project site, and the client is amenable to adding plantings along there to further increase that buffer area. But one thing we don't want to do is plant new plantings along that, or rather within that buffer zone to, to disturb that area. So it is something that the client is willing to work on.
So the location and the nature of those plantings will be on a subsequent plat?
Correct. We can show that. It's, I believe it's lot 1 that affects, or Mr. Connor believe, affects him the most. So that's where it would be shown.
Okay, thank you.
And then, just a note again, so this is preliminary plat review and potential vote. So To the extent the board made that a condition of the final plat, then that would have to be added, and they would have to meet that condition prior to final plat approval, if that was something the board was interested in. But, I would also encourage the applicant to speak directly to the neighbor as well, and in case that, I don't want to speak for him, but in case that the plantings were on his side of the property, or, you know, in determining where those are placed, I think that should be part of the conversation.
Okay, moving on to Article 4, the general requirements and design standards of Section 315-22, design standards. And the purpose of this article is to ensure that the highest standards of site, building, and landscape designs are conscientiously met through the use of qualified technical and aesthetic judgment compatible with the Village of Altamont Comprehensive Plan. In considering applications for subdivision of land, the Zoning Board of Appeals shall be guided by the standards set forth hereafter. On 315-24 streets, there are no public streets proposed.
I already read through this section.
And you read that one, already? Okay. 315-26, low-impact development design standards. During project design, the Zoning Board of Appeals shall require incorporation of low-impact development standards where feasible. Appropriate engineering should include use of one or more of the following low-impact development techniques: bioretention, rain garden. As we all know, those have been incorporated vastly throughout the construction site. Soil amendments. Are any soil amendments? None that I know of, right? Okay. Grassed swales, yes. Disconnectivity or rain barrel. We have the wells, which are past the rain garden. Correct. Permeable pavers. There were none proposed on that. I know there was a question on that, or concern by a neighbor, so as to minimize even the keyhole lots as opposed to asphalt. Using permeable pavers. I'm going to say that during a normal rain, the water table is high as it is, that even if you have asphalt, that is, they have a design out there, doesn't have to be pavers, water's not going to go anywhere because there's water right below the asphalt as it is. The problem with permeable asphalt is the owner or owners need to know how to maintain it or use it. You cannot use salt products. You cannot sand on it because it'll plug it up and become useless. Okay, so that also is for the pavers as well. Use any sand, eventually those pavers will plug up. Okay. Conservation of land in natural state. As we just spoke about, there is a buffer. There's very minimal, as I understand it, and by the engineering report, of what's going to be disturbed on the property. Minimizing imperviousness, reduce street width, for example. We pretty much have the minimum as far as the access roads to these homes. And the driveways to each home? Anybody have any concerns or say on the driveways? Andrea, anything?
No, I think we've incorporated 4 out of the 6, or whatever, 4 out of the 7 design features. Or we've required the incorporation of them.
Thank you. Under section 315-27, lots. Arrangement. The arrangement of lots shall be such that there will be no foreseeable difficulties for reasons of topography or other conditions in locating a building on each lot and in providing access to buildings on such lots from an approved street. B, access across a watercourse, where watercourse separates the buildable area of a lot from the street access. Provision shall be made for this installation of a culvert or other structure such as a bridge of a design approved by the village engineer or other licensed professional engineer as designated by the village board. There are no bridges or waterways other than the swales and small culvert, I'll call it a culvert, that goes under the driveway from one side past the keyhole lots and to the other side. Right. C, side lot lines. Side lot lines shall be at right angles to street lines, excuse me, unless a variation from this rule will give a better street or lot plan. D, access from major streets. Lots shall not, in general, derive access exclusively from a major street. Where driveway access from a major street may be necessary for several adjoining lots, the zoning board of appeals may require that such lots be served by a combined access drive in order to limit possible traffic hazards on such streets. These are keyhole lots. We don't have a problem with that. We have 2 major accesses. And I'm looking at 3 lots on Western Avenue, 2 existing, 1 buildable. Yes? Right? That are already there. E, corner lots. In general, corner lots should be larger than interior lots to provide for proper building setback and each street and required site triangles and to provide a desirable building site. F, keyhole lots. Properties that access the property behind another fronting the street shall comply with setback requirements as defined in the Village of Altamont zoning law as it may be adopted. On Article 6, Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan.
I read that.
Oh, you read that already? Okay. On the 315-28, Parks and Playgrounds, we have none. Under 315-32, improvements to be completed or bond filed.
Second part of that,
The one before that?
just if you, the board should discuss whether or not that's going to be required or waived.
Okay. Under one condition, let's say that the board shall requires a condition of approval of any such plat payment to the village in the amount of $1,500 per lot. Such money shall be used by the village for park and recreation purposes, including the acquisition of property.
to take a step back. So if the zoning board of appeals determines that a suitable park or parks of adequate size cannot be properly located in any such plat or are otherwise not practical, the board shall require as a condition for approval of any such plat, payment to the village in the amount of $1,500 per lot. So the board's got to discuss this requirement and whether or not it's going to be waived, or if you're going to require that as part of this subdivision. So you do have the ability to waive any requirement, but it does read as a shall require, so you have to discuss it.
Didn't the applicant propose a bond for possible infrastructure for a sidewalk?
That was, yeah. Know that was discussed at some point, but that's different from
It's different,
Yeah.
but, I mean, I don't,
a public benefit, yeah.
yeah, it's a public
Yeah, yeah.
benefit, and, you know, I, for one, don't necessarily think that we need another park. We have two fantastic parks, plus the school. But in lieu of that $1,500, if we consider I don't even have the figure on top of my head that was proposed. But I would feel comfortable waiving that.
I'm just not entirely sure where we landed on that. I know it was discussion last summer, if the applicant has a position on that. Yeah.
So I had brought up that I would be willing to do a $35,000 donation to wherever they want to do sidewalks, whether it ends up on Schoharie or somewhere else. So that's where it hadn't been talked about in quite some time.
Okay.
I was surprised we didn't keep bringing it up, but anyway, that was the plan.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of an additional fee, so I guess my original comment stays, but I'd love to waive the 15, being that that's another 15,000.
Thank you.
So just another consideration is some of the park money could be used for maintenance of parks, not creation of parks.
So having read that, and the money used by the village, what do you think, you know?
Well, I would just say, I don't feel comfortable asking a resident who's willing to donate a sum that's greater than what would be required. Maybe if we change the definition of what that sum could be used for, I don't know how that would work, but if someone says they're willing to do X amount, hitting them up for another 15 doesn't seem very neighborly.
Yes.
How do you feel, Simon?
I don't know how stretched the village is for maintenance of the parks that we've got. If it's a requirement of, if it's a requirement of the village law, I think we should go ahead and ask for that.
Well, in lieu of the 35 that he proposed to donate to the village for whatever use.
Sidewalks.
I'd be willing to do 20,000 and then just keep the 15 so that you're following, that can go towards maintenance and the 20 can go towards something else.
Yep. So same total, just split.
Just splitting it up.
Okay, I see what you mean. I would go along with that, so as you mentioned, I'm sorry, I'll go along with that, so as you mentioned, park maintenance. Good
Yeah,
use for that.
I-
It'll be earmarked for that.
Yeah,
And then,
Yeah.
the $20,000 for whatever the village wants to do it, if they want to extend sidewalks, as you mentioned, wherever in the village, or what they might need.
that seems like a reasonable compromise.
Thank you. Thank you. Under 315-32, improvements to be completed or bond filed. Prior to an action by the Zoning Board of Appeals approving a subdivision plat, the applicant shall be required to complete, in accordance with the Zoning Board of Appeals decision and to the satisfaction of the appropriate village departments, all the street, sanitary, and other improvements specified in the action approving said plat, or, as an alternative, to file with the village board a bond in the amount estimated by the Zoning Board of Appeals to secure to the village the satisfactory construction and installation of the uncompleted portion of the required improvements. 315-33, performance escrow. In order to ensure that developments perform to the expectations of the village, a performance escrow shall be established to comply with the requirements of Section 7-730 of the village law, which shall be satisfactory to the village board as to the form, sufficiency, and manner of execution. A period of 1 year or such other period as the Zoning Board of Appeals may determine appropriate within required improvements must be completed, shall be specified by the Zoning Board of Appeals and expressed in an escrow agreement between the village and the applicant. If I might, I know that this subdivision construction is going to be done in 2 phases, one through Western Avenue, so lots 5 through 8 get performed first, if I understand it. So however long that takes, and then the other section on Western Avenue being performed, so I don't mind 1 year upon completion of the development in its entirety, as opposed to one section being completed and then the time clock's there, and then the next development. Anybody want to chime in?
I think Ro has a comment.
Sure.
We would like to know if the board would be amenable to not phasing the project, but to, again, allowing or restricting access only through Western Avenue. The client doesn't want to be kind of held as to the selling of the homes in certain areas first, if that makes sense. Kind of a first come, first served based on the lots being sold is our intent.
Understood. It's just, I was just mentioning something that was mentioned before in some previous hearings, that you would be backtracking, constructing those first and out, so that there will be minimum, those heavy trucking on Schoharie Plank West.
Okay.
So, but hey, construction is construction. If you can perform it all that way and build those homes as well, I don't have a problem.
Okay.
But upon completion, all right, of that last nail, paint stroke, whatever it may be, seed planted, the clock will start,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
Pending inspection. Okay? Would that be fair? I mean,
Yes. Thank you, board.
okay.
So, Danny, is
Yes.
this the time to bring up, I mean, one of the residents had requested an escrow for flood damages, if flooding does occur, it will be hard to determine whether that's from the floodplain or the construction, but maybe some criteria could be made for that. They would have to be inclusive. But it doesn't seem fair to the residents surrounding the access road on Plank Road to be at risk for flooding without recompense, to me, so.
So just to be clear, the escrow would not be accessible to those residents. It's not set up to provide for payments to potential damages. It would be set up to the extent that it's determined that any of these proposed improvements are not functioning properly.
So it's
are
a
not-
separate issue, but
Yeah.
can what I just said be, is that something that can be entertained or not? What I
I'm
ju-
not aware off the top of my head where we would
Yeah.
set something up like that. Again, it's, all of these requirements are that they've developed this to the standards that they've
Yeah, I
stated.
understand.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
different issue.
yeah.
Yeah.
If a private landowner is damaged by another private landowner, then that would be a nuisance, private action, not necessarily where we would be, we as the village would be involved.
Question, since I'm not familiar with this here. And I'm looking at performance escrow.
Yeah. I mean, the bigger issue with the performance escrow is determining what the amount would be based on estimated costs of what improvements we're concerned with and what we think it would be to enforce that. So we'll have to get some feedback from Brad as to what those costs may be.
And it's,
And if the applicant has any supporting documentation on that.
and that,
Not now, but yeah.
that escrow is just for if the design feature is not implemented or is not functioning properly, or?
So it's just to hold the development to what they've
What they said they
shown
were
on
gonna
their, shown on their plans. And to the extent that you have stormwater measures that are not working properly, to the extent they're not even installed, to the extent that trees are not planted, to the extent that the road's not constructed, all of those things would set forth in the escrow agreement. We'd provide notice to them first. They could attempt to cure that, have a follow-up inspection, and then that money is in place in the event that we have to access it because the developer's not correcting it.
Okay.
But it does sound like the board would like that in place. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, it says it shall be established, so, right?
Yeah, but so as set forth by the board, so that's, as with any of these provisions, it could be waived if you felt that. But I don't think that's the board's position, if I'm getting everybody's opinion correctly. Would like some sort of performance escrow in place, correct? Yeah.
I mean, I think reputation and the fact that the applicant's a resident should also come into play.
All right, as I understand, the performance is the development and construction to completion in case whatever might occur. And the village is looking at something not completed, an eyesore, whatever it may be, or even homeowners that have moved in and something to the exterior is not finished, performance-wise. So that, that escrow account.
Someone purchasing the home and having an issue is going to deal with that directly with the builder.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. My concern, and Chuck, you had mentioned this here to bring it up, but is unless historically something that's been documented as flooding within, and I'm going to just specifically say Schoharie Plank West, and it floods again, that somebody's not pointing the finger, because that is not part of a cause created due to construction, that I would be concerned, how would be that policed? You know, it's, unless the village and homeowners have all documentation that, and complaints to the village, however long ago that, you know, I had a foot of water in my front yard, et cetera, or, what's the name of that creek again? Fly?
Okay. That,
Okay, that
the,
creek.
the village has an official, I understand the village has an official name. Unfortunately, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Okay, no problem. You said it once and just disappeared. That will have to be maintained, but let's say in the past, if it wasn't maintained and it overflowed banks and flooded people's homes, that's an issue that would be the village in general, and should not be applied to the new construction per se, for damages.
Yeah, the homes on Schoharie Plank West were built and occupancy permits were given before flood zones were considered. So these properties are all within the flood zone. And as I say, we're expecting more intense storms in the future. So I think it's inevitable that there will be flooding there.
Okay. So, again, Chuck, I don't know how we can, you know, pin something on that. Unfortunately, we're looking at the engineer's report, the obviously dredging that has not taken place in over 20 years at least. I've only been here 20 years in the village. So I have a hard time, you know, saying let's slap a bond on there
Yeah.
without many stipulations or historical track to say, you know, anything beyond this here would be a cause of construction.
I have a question here. We've got, as I see it, 5 different places, at least, where it's saying that the board gets to consider the amount of a bond. Are these 5 different bonds, or is it one bond that we're talking about?
So the first front one, which is 31532, is the performance bond, and that would be posted to ensure actual construction, which is different from the performance escrow, which may be a bond, which gives the ability of the village to track it for a certain time period, which the 1-year time period has been discussed. So the construction bond is to make sure it's actually constructed as stated on the plat. The performance escrow is to review what has been constructed.
Yeah, And Simon, the way I see it on 31532 is infrastructure.
Okay.
Sewerage, water lines, having to do with the streets, digging up, paving, whatever it may be. Then the performance bonds is, say, the driveways, any completion of the project. Obviously, he doesn't have any streets or street lighting or storm drains in those streets. And that would be part of that, so that if they take a walk, the village has something to complete it, that they're going to be responsible for. But in this particular case, there are no streets that the village will be responsible for.
Okay.
The performance bond would also be if they otherwise, the applicant otherwise requested to have a CO or other final approval, but there were certain aspects that had not been constructed yet, that they could get that final sign-off by having a construction bond in place to ensure that, although you've told us that you're going to, say it's the tree plantings, but they want to be all wrapped up in November or December, and it doesn't make sense to plant the trees, that performance bond could be posted to ensure that the trees are planted when it's the right time of year, which is, again, different from looking at the actual performance of what's been in place.
And that would be determined by us now and not the building inspector at the time that those COs are requested?
So at this time, since we're in preliminary, we could state that we actually don't have to think at all, so because this is just a requirement. So either the applicant has completed everything, or as an alternative, to file with the village board a bond in the amount estimated. So we don't know what that would be at this point. So we would just state that as a condition that all of these things are going to be completed, or in the alternative, come back for that bond amount.
But that's not even up for debate. That's just a requirement.
Correct, yep.
All right.
Under 31534, inspections. The village may employ an inspector to act as the agent of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the purposes of assuring the satisfactory completion of improvements required by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and shall determine an amount sufficient to defray cost of inspection. The applicant shall pay the village cost of inspection before the subdivision plat is signed for filing.
So this is a may, and again, to Simon's point, kind of, this keeps going back to holding the developer accountable, and, numerous sections where there's things in place for the village to go back. So this one is a may, have the inspector, which would be more of a proactive going out, ensuring that everything is done. If we feel that there's such improvements that are beyond kind of what would be typical of the building and code department to check on construction. So I think this one should be more targeted if there are specific improvements or conditions of this approval that you would like the opportunity for almost a separate inspection to make sure that they were done.
So you answered my question. I was just curious how this is different than the normal construction phases, the inspections on the different phases of construction. I mean, the primary areas that I think directly address other residents' concerns would be the plantings, the swales, the rain gardens. So I think it might be smart to limit our inspections to that. Or not limit, but direct our inspections to that.
if you recall, one of the inspections that would be done periodically or whenever is the grading, to make sure that it complies, not necessarily with creating something that's going to be diverted, and a swale is not going to get any water.
You don't have to really read that. That's just a waiver section.
Waiver.
So, just at this time too, if the board has any specific conditions that you would like the board to consider that were not discussed as part of the factors, we can do that. And we can just have any general discussion about the application at this time.
Maybe you can help us out here. Lot line adjustments that the applicant is in agreement with some of the homeowners because either they've encroached on the existing property and/or a home is now, doesn't have the minimum side setback as it may be. How do we handle something like that?
So that would be a condition that, if approved, any lot line adjustments would require legal descriptions to be provided to the village along with any deeds that are required to transfer the property, as well as evidence that those deeds have been recorded with the county.
When would that take place?
Prior to final plat approval.
Okay. Sure.
One thing that came up during the last, not this process, but the previous subdivision on Bozenkill Road, I just wanted to bring up one thing that would need to.
Thank you, Gary.
One thing that came up during the previous subdivision, we want to make sure is followed in this before the final plat is signed, is to make sure that all of the properties have their street addresses assigned prior to plat approval, so they can be included on the plat. Because on Bozenkill Road project, that didn't happen, so the town of Guilderland couldn't adhere to their address plan, so they had to create new addresses, 145A, 145B, 145C. So I think that's important that we have that on the final plat.
Thank you. I also know there was a concern, and it was spoken about last meeting, I'm bringing it up again, about no parking on the keyhole lot access, other than one's own private driveway, so as not to have any kind of an incumbency to emergency vehicle access at any time.
Just on the maintenance agreement that our office is working with applicant's attorney's office to finalize, we did reach out again. The plat shows a common sewer main running under the driveway that was not expressly addressed in the maintenance agreement. So our advice to the board is that there be a condition that the agreement be revised to provide for shared maintenance responsibility for the sewer line up to the individual lateral connections. So that's just an update on the maintenance agreement. But otherwise, we're in agreement on form.
Excuse me, was that for stormwater or sewer?
Sewer.
Thank you.
Just a note for the board's consideration, based on the comments about the creek and the proposed dredging, there could be a condition that the village undertake that project prior to any construction commencing. I think that would be reasonable if the board agrees.
And the good news, it's supposed to be done this summer.
Just to go back to when we started the discussion, we do have the revisions that were requested by the engineer Brad Grant, so I would add that, a condition be that engineer Grant verify via PDF review any and all requested changes that have been noted as of his latest comment letter.
That's prior to the final approval.
That would just be a condition of, prior to final approval. Yep.
All right. Any other concerns or thoughts that anybody wants to share regarding the subdivision?
Hyde, can you repeat your comment about the dredging requirement?
Yeah, just based on the concerns that were raised about the current status of the creek, prior to this project being developed, the board should consider whether or not you'd like a condition that the village undertake that dredging project prior to construction beginning at
Before-
site.
Before development or before building construction?
Well, I think the concern would be that there's already an issue, so any added construction could, potentially add to that problem. So I don't think it should hold up whether or not there's a final plat approval, if that's the way the board's moving. But, prior to building permit being issued for that first lot, I think could make sense.
So do we have to vote on that, or?
So this is all just deliberations, yeah. It would be good just to get feedback if that's where the board's leaning, yeah. This is all to direct drafting a resolution.
So I'm in agreement with that.
Highly in agreement with that, because my concerns, I don't want anybody to have any problems through the construction, pointing the finger, whatever it may be, as construction takes place. We've been told, we've been given, I'll call it unofficial information that the dredging will take place so that that drain line from Scary Plank West properties, the access is going to be opened. Because right now, as you understand, it's under debris. So there's very little, which is why the neighboring along Scary Plank on that access, keyhole lot access road, when there's some pumps pump, it doesn't go anywhere. You know, so I'd like to see that done first. Okay, where do you want to go from here? Draw up a resolution.
Well, are there any areas of concern that we discussed through the standards tonight that you'd like to go back to? We can go back to certain sections. Again, we can discuss any conditions. We could have a board member make a motion. You know, it's entirely up to the board at this point.
Oh, I had a question, I believe it was Mr. and Mrs. Connors, with the plantings, so that you're not exposed to, you know, in the wintertime, as you mentioned in your letter. Not to the elements, but to sight from your new neighbors. Would those plantings take place on your property? Because I don't know exactly where you're located, where your property's located to these, oh, you're up in this side?
I believe so.
On the upper part?
That's some, that might need to repeat what I'm saying, so it's on the record. That's something we're willing to work with developers to decide how many and where they should be.
Are you backing up on Marion Court over here? Gun Club, I'm sorry, Gun Club Road, yeah. Thank you, Rob.
You can point on the map where our property is. So he's pointing on the map where our property is.
Gotcha.
Right. So where the plantings are, there's a tree line, but there's no evergreens as part of that tree line. So I've had some discussions with Mr. Miller about, yes, there will be some evergreens, and how many we haven't decided on. But it's in both the new owners of the houses and our interest to make sure that there's a screen so we can't see each other. I would ask that there be some language and some indication on the revised plan about that they're going to be there. There could be exactly where there's some discretion that we're open to anyway.
Okay, because if I recall, there was a concern of disturbing the existing property where that buffer, or on that buffer zone.
Right. So if they're on Mr. Miller's property, it would be before the buffer zone. If they're on our property, we actually are starting to develop our own buffer as well to expand the area between the properties. The details I'm comfortable with working out with Mr. Miller. It could be general language that there'll be some evergreens planted along our property line to screen the view.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so just that point again, because we're at preliminary level, and it sounds like the parties are in agreement to At this point, I would say the condition would be that there be additional screening and landscaping, which shall include evergreens to be agreed upon between the parties and made part of that final plat.
I don't have anything else that I want to add. I voiced my concerns already regarding a long time ago, the swales, the rain gardens, had to do with water. The good news we heard today regarding the dredging should take place before September. I have no concerns. I voiced my concerns already regarding the swales, the rain gardens, the water control of water. And the good news is that, like I said, hopefully by September, that creek will be dredged and that will be cleared out and ready to go. We've heard from the applicant that he's willing to divide that $35,000 to $15,000 to Parks and Recreation, and the additional $20,000 to any use at the village would separately to use as they see fit.
So I think it's limited to sidewalks. It's not just a blank.
Oh, to set for
Yeah, I'll let the
specifically
applicant speak, but I believe it's to
sidewalks.
sidewalks, correct? Yeah, we shouldn't leave it as just a
Nope.
open anything.
Okay, so where do we go from here, my good man? You have the information to draw up the resolution?
Yep. So what I'll do is take the worksheet. I will incorporate the comments that we had on each factor, and I will also draft the proposed conditions that were discussed tonight, and draft that in the form of a resolution, findings that could be attached and voted on at the next meeting.
Last call? Everybody's good?
I'm good.
Okay. Close the deliberations, right? Motion?
So just motion to table discussions until next meeting,
Okay.
table the application until next meeting.
All righty. I'd entertain a motion to table the discussions till the next meeting.
So moved?
Second,
Okay.
Board Member True,
Agree.
Board Member Wilson,
approved.
Board Member Sullivan,
Approved?
Board Member Witham,
In favor.
and Chairperson Ramirez.
In favor.
Okay, so this will be on the agenda for proposed findings and resolution to be considered by the board at the July 23rd meeting.
All right, I'd like to,
Before we go on, can you just outline for me the steps, because this is my first subdivision?
Yeah.
So the next meeting would be possibly approving preliminary plat, and then what's the steps after that?
Yeah, so next meeting will be adoption of the findings and a motion either to approve or deny the preliminary plat approval with conditions. If that preliminary plat is approved, then it's back to the applicant to comply with all those conditions prior to any final plat being approved. And final plat, once the final plat's approved, then that's filed with the county, at which point you'd actually create the lots. So next steps is really to just set forth, what are we requiring as any final steps prior to that map being signed, so.
Thank you.
we have some old business, the minutes for the meeting for May 28th, 2024. If you go to page 7. Fourth conversation down by myself says, yes, okay, there's a swale. It looks to be a swale of about 3 inches. Do you see? So you can leave it at 3 inches?
3 inches.
If you want to recorrect it, yeah. On page 9, toward the bottom, let's go up, say, 4 lines, conversation by myself. There was a question on, I believe it was forecasting construction, or let's say after your foundations are in, should it become fruition? Who's going to confirm, or will you be confirming the grading elevation specifications? You use the word forecasting?
Thank you.
The next one was 19. 17. Third conversation from the top. If you want to comment on that, that was you. Richard, Brad, and,
I don't know.
okay, and leave it at Richard, Brad. I'd given as responses to, what were you talking about there? I think that was it. So I entertain the motion to approve the minutes from May 28, 2024 as corrected. Don't leave me hanging.
Make the motion.
Second?
Okay, roll call.
Approve.
Approved.
Approved?
Chairperson
Approved.
Tony.
Approved.
Thank you.
Any other new business? Anybody? Hearing nothing, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved?
Second. Approved.
Approved?
Approved.
In favor?
There are any good
tonight, sorry. Pick the hot one to